Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here today with you among esteemed colleagues and participants. This presentation will focus on creating awareness of the need for language digitization and why accelerating implementations has now become vital to Indigenous communities. UNESCO will be highlighting this need during the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. The Los Pinos Declaration, signed at a 2020 UNESCO event, places Indigenous peoples at the center of its recommendations under the slogan, "Nothing for us without us." In other words, any advances proposed for supporting Indigenous languages must be created in partnership with those language communities themselves. Understanding the different circumstances of Indigenous peoples will help us create the tools to empower them to seek language technology solutions for their communities. Out of 7,000 languages spoken in the world today, only around 500 are fully supported for digital use, leaving the remaining language communities at a significant disadvantage. I have spoken with many communities, and what surprises me is that every time I hear the same thing. I just want to have the same digital experience that everyone else has, but in my own language. Inequalities in the information available for different languages online has implications for who and what gets represented and by whom. So far, the digital presence of languages has been dictated by the commercial imperatives of globalization. There are many reasons why we have not managed to digitize all the languages. From how languages change and evolve to the cost of revitalization and digitization, we have many steps that require resources and funding which are rarely available. Bridging the digital divide with machine translation is in everyone's mind, but even this will not enable Indigenous languages to be online. The range of different digital needs for each language is prohibitive in creating a one-size-fits-all model. There are communities which have keyboards but not standardized orthography. Another may have fonts, but they are not supported in the big applications. Another community may be well on its way for full digitization and looking at automation applications such as spell checkers, whereas a language with non-standardized spelling conventions cannot have this. And for those languages which only have oral form, the internet can only be accessible with speech applications. Translation Commons created the Language Digitization Initiative for communities who want the benefits of language digitization. It defines a process to move a language through the steps of digitization. There are many components to this initiative, including the enabling of Indigenous communities to pursue and manage the digitization process themselves. As a volunteer community of language technologists, we came together with a vision to enable all languages access to the internet and its benefits by creating free resources and trainings on language digitization for Indigenous communities. Our advisory board is a team of volunteer language technology experts who have worked with Indigenous communities in many different areas of the world throughout their careers. Our team consists of computer engineers, linguists, terminology experts, keyboard creators, Unicode specialists, and language professionals, all of whom come together because of a passion for supporting linguistic diversity and the Indigenous languages of this world. What exactly is involved in digitizing a language? Language digitization is the process of enabling a language to be usable on digital devices such as smartphones, computers, and tablets. The very first steps of the digitization process is script technology, which involves first script encoding and standards such as ISO and Unicode. Second step is the font creation, which should be based on the Unicode character set as this enables interchange and readability across many platforms. Fonts based on proprietary character sets or encodings do not. An important step, but not necessarily in this sequence, is creating input methods such as keyboards. Even without a Unicode approval and standardization, a community can use a specially designed keyboard for text messages. Finally, some basic language data, such as months, days, times, etc., need to be input in the Unicode Common Locale Data Repository so the large corporations can include the language data in their applications. In order for indigenous languages to reach the level of automation of the main digital languages, they will need to enable their script online and to create enough content to be able to leverage existing language technologies. By using these technologies, they also increase their digital content, which improves their digital experience and accuracy of the applications. In this workflow, we have captured the dependencies and complexities of language digitization. The line is straight only for purposes of illustration in capturing the distinct efforts needed for each discipline. Each language in the world has a different digital footprint. Even some of the top 100 languages are not fully represented in the entire language technology workflow shown here. It is a complex and multi-stakeholder journey for any language to be fully developed digitally. We need font designs and input methods so thousands of endangered languages can start the journey. We need educational material to increase the digital content, and we need data sets so most languages can have functional automation support in applications. We need properly trained linguists so knowledge will be shared and cultural treasures will survive. Our first resource document, Indigenous Languages Zero to Digital, covers the first section of the workflow, which is script, and has identified two parallel and interconnected workflows: the language workflow and the technology workflow. The flowcharts are questions with yes/no answers, evaluating the community's current situation and proposing concrete next steps. The document is a guide to perform specific tasks and offers pointers to resources and tools. The first guideline propelled our team to continue creating resources for many other important digitization steps. We created the Zero to Digital series of guidelines. Each guideline has the basic document or knowledge base along with other supporting documentation. Then this is offered to communities to pilot and implement. We are present to answer questions, offer assistance, guide them to other resources, and observe the implementation, which will lead to evaluation and reporting. There have been many successful examples of communities digitizing their language, ranging from individuals such as Bibhuti Chakma digitizing single-handedly the Chakma language of India, all the way to entire communities uniting together to bring their language online, such as the Sunuwar community in Nepal and Sikkim. We assisted the Sunuwar language community in creating a Unicode proposal for their script encoding, which has been approved. We prototyped their keyboard, and now we are working together to create Unicode fonts and do a final push to get the big computer companies and platforms to include the Sunuwar script on the company's default list of scripts, which is offered to all their customers. In breaking down the language digitization process, we are able to create resources for each step. These resources vary from documents, video presentations by experts, training workshops, and educational material. We are also creating templates and tools such as keyboards and repository technology. The process of gathering language data forms the basis for the entire digitization process. For example, defining keyboard font and script characteristics to name only a few. Repositories are needed to host and organize the data and allow for sharing among researchers, linguists, and for community contribution, review, license rights, and privacy controls. Terminology management systems enable documentation of definitions of terms, grammar usage, and translations. Terminology information is used by digital systems for spell and grammar checking, predictive text, optical character recognition, automated speech recognition, and many other functions. At the very advanced end of digitization, and if a large enough language corpus exists, machine translation may become feasible. Our terminology guidelines explains concepts important to terminology work. For example, we explain the concept of the semantic triangle, where it's important to recognize the difference between a concept, words for that concept, and the actual thing in the real world that those words refer to. It also explains special problems in creating new terminology as needed for computer use due to unfamiliar cultural concepts, conceptual differences, or different term formation patterns. This becomes tricky for different cultures, such as when concepts are missing or designations have very different meanings. Our machine translation guideline explains what machine translation is, how it works, and why it matters. What are the key questions to ask before beginning a machine translation initiative? What are the challenges for Indigenous languages? The guideline offers an overview of the production and release process for machine translation. More completed guidelines and in progress of being published are mentoring and internship for language professionals in Indigenous communities and how to create a certification program and an association to acquire a standard standing within the legal and healthcare system. We also have guidelines currently being developed, such as digital preservation, and we hope many more to follow. We have created and continue to do so many video presentations from different language technology experts highlighting their work, as well as digitization success stories from many communities. The videos are on the Translation Commons YouTube channel, and they include community stories, overviews on script encoding, fonts, keyboards, internationalization, translation interpretation, and just to name a few. As we are planning the language technology within the Global Action Plan for the IDIL, we are developing a series of workshops for any community interested in digitizing their language. There is strong evidence that learning in one's native language in elementary schools both encourages children to learn and participate in education, raising self-esteem. This encourages parents to continue using their native language at home. LDI is working to locate free online educational materials suitable for translation. This will support the production of instructional resources for teachers in their native languages so children can learn in their own tongue. We are also creating instructional resources for the training and certification of Indigenous translators and interpreters. Indigenous interpreters are vital for every community to help them in representation in healthcare, judicial, and civil environments. We have created an extensive Indigenous interpreter manual and workbook addressing specific issues that Indigenous interpreters face. We're in the process of creating the same for translation. These programs are specifically for speakers of Indigenous languages, so trainees may attain professional standard and their communities may be better supported. One of our longer-lasting projects have been the professors' meeting originally suggested by UNESCO in 2019 as part of our contribution to IYIL. Our team coordinates discussions and presentations among a group of professors from around the world on Indigenous languages, technology, and related topics. It has increased its scope, and now we have lots of contributors, guests, experts, participants, support graphics engineers, volunteers in many time zones. We invite you to join us. There have been many successful examples of communities digitizing, but the goal of the Language Digitization Initiative is to bring together professionals, researchers, and language communities to support the digitization of endangered, indigenous, and minority languages, and to build capacity and professional networks to help all languages have equal opportunities and equal digital footprint online. Thank you very much.